Hello everyone, and welcome back to our video series on Julius Caesar. Today we're going to wrap up Act 1, Scene 3, so do make sure that you have your notes handy for the video prior to this, as you're going to need those notes and your notes from today to finish the worksheet that's going to be due on Friday. So we're still continuing the same scene, so remember we're on March 14th. The night before the Ides of March, and we've had a number of strange happenings going on. And in this part of the scene in particular, we're going to see the conspirators set into motion the plan to finally win over Brutus. And we're going to see how important it is that Brutus join the conspiracy, because without Brutus, there's no hope that the conspiracy will succeed. Looking then to our characters, we're going to be looking at just 3 characters to finish the scene today. Casca and Cassius, who you are already familiar with, and Cinna, another member of the conspiracy who's going to be responsible for placing those false letters to Brutus inside of his home. So can I. So every bondman in his own hand bears the power to cancel his captivity. And why should Caesar be a tyrant then? Poor man! I know he would not be a wolf, but that he sees the Romans are but sheep. He were no lion, were not Romans hinds. Those that with haste will make a mighty fire begin it with weak straws. What trash is Rome, what rubbish and what offal, when it serves for the base matter to illuminate so vile a thing as Caesar! But, oh grief, where hast thou led me? I, perhaps, speak this before a willing bondman. Then I know my answer must be made. But I am armed, and dangers are to me indifferent. You speak to Casca, and to such a man that is no fleering telltale. Hold my hand. Be factious for redress of all these griefs, and I will set this foot of mine as far as those who goes farthest. There's a bargain made. Now know you, Casca, I have moved already some certain of the noblest minded Romans to undergo with me an enterprise of honorable, dangerous consequence. And I do know, by this they stay for me in Pompey's porch. For now, this fearful night, there is no stir or walking in the streets, and the complexion of the element in favors like the work we have in hand, most bloody, fiery, and most terrible. Enter Cinna. Stand close a while, for here comes one in haste. 'Tis Cinna. I do know him by his gait. He is a friend. Cinna, where haste you so? To find out you. Who's that? Metellus Cimber? No, it is Casca, one incorporate to our attempts. Am I not stayed for, Cinna? I am glad on't. What a fearful night is this! There's 2 or 3 of us who've seen strange sights. Am I not stayed for? Tell me. Yes, you are. Oh, Cassius, if you could but win the noble Brutus to our party, be you content. Good Cinna, take this paper, and look you lay it in the praetor's chair, where Brutus may but find it, and throw this in at his window. Set this up with wax upon old Brutus's statue. All this done, repair to Pompey's porch, where you shall find us. Is Decius Brutus and Trebonius there? All but Metellus Cimber, and he's gone to seek you at your house. Well, I will hie and so bestow these papers as you bade me. That done, repair to Pompey's theatre. Exit Cinna. Come, Casca, you and I yet ere day see Brutus at his house. 3 parts of him is ours already, and the man entire upon the next encounter yields him ours. Oh, he sits high in all the people's hearts, and that which would appear offense in us, his countenance, like richest alchemy, will change to virtue and to worthiness. Him and his worth, and our great need of him, you have right well conceded. Let us go, for it is after midnight, and ere day we will awake him and be sure of him. Coming then to the end of Act 1, we see things begin to heat up in terms of the conspiracy. And one thing that I want to continue to point out to you is that Cassius is a master orator, and he uses his speech oftentimes to disparage Caesar, right? That's his whole entire point, to make Caesar look like this awful person, because that means taking him out is a service to the people of Rome. And one thing before we dive into Cassius's speech in particular is looking at Casca's initial words, because they tie back into the previous video that we watched. And so here, when he talks about this power to cancel his captivity, he's talking about the ability to take his own life if need be. And we see that suicide has been brought up a number of times in the play already. And because we see its constant reappearance, we need to take note of that and know that later on in the play, it's going to be a point of significance. Turning now to Cassius, we see here in this box that Cassius is going to make three metaphors that do two things simultaneously, or at the same time. The first thing they do is to show Caesar as someone who is weak, as someone who is not able to gain power in their own right, but only gains power by essentially playing off of the weaknesses of others. And additionally, it's also going to paint the Roman people in a bad light, and again is going to reveal this negative view that Cassius has of the Roman people. And the first metaphor that we see here is Caesar being compared to a wolf, and the Romans being compared to sheep. And when we think about this comparison being made, right, a wolf is someone who is an excellent hunter, right? And when they hunt to kill. And when we think about sheep are creatures, right, that go where they're told, that follow, that move in a pack, but also that are vulnerable to attack. So here, this image that Cassius is painting is that Caesar is only playing the part of the wolf, the hunter, the devourer, because he sees that the Roman people are weak. So again, it's not that Caesar rises to power because of his intelligence, but he's simply playing off the vulnerability of the Roman people. And the same exact idea is being made here in this second metaphor. Caesar is now this lion, and he is only allowed to be this lion, this king of the jungle, this proud figure, because the Romans are hinds, meaning female deer. Again, unfortunately, understanding that in this era, female figures were viewed as being weak or lesser than men. So this is the image that's being painted here, that Caesar is allowed to take advantage of the Roman people because of how weak and feminine they have become. And then finally we see in this last metaphor that Caesar's power is able to grow like this mighty fire. So a fire, we already know its symbolic connotation, right? Something that at one instance can be viewed as passionate, but also devouring, because the Roman people are like weak straws. And weak straw meaning that it easily is able to be caught alight. So this passion that Cassius sees the Roman people have for Caesar only exists because essentially they will go with whomever is in power. And then in the next few lines, we also continue to see Cassius take a stab at the Roman people, likening them to trash, right? So you can imagine yourself as a Roman person. If you heard Cassius saying these things about you, you would not at all be pleased. But this is important for us to understand, for us to see, because it pulls back that facade that Cassius has, that he is all about the Roman people, something he has portrayed to Brutus, and really shows what he thinks. Right? That the Roman people essentially are too weak to understand that they are being used, and that I, Cassius, right, as this founder of Rome, so to speak, right? Remember his comparison between himself and Aeneas, that I need to save Rome somehow, something very prideful in his character. But then we see that Cassius, not one to lose the chance, right, to flesh out or to feel the motives of those around him. He says this to Casca: I perhaps speak this before a willing bondman, And a bondman here being another word for slave. So he's saying to Cassius that perhaps I have overstepped in what I just said, because I might be talking to someone who is like that Roman trash that I'm talking about, who is as weak as they are. And this is incredibly intelligent of him, because it's a do or die moment for Cassius. Either this conspiracy is going to go down with the help of Brutus, or it's going to blow up in his face. So he needs to assess the loyalty of the people around him, something unfortunately Caesar does not do. And here we see that Casca gives Cassius the answer that he wanted, right? Because he's no fleering tattletale. So essentially saying, I'm not going to rat on you. I'm not a tattletale. So we understand here that Casca is all in, and that he's incredibly loyal to Cassius. And Casca continues to show his loyalty, and everything that we're going to see here from this point out is going to be talking about the conspiracy finally being set in motion. And Casca making this dramatic display of loyalty, saying that the person who goes the farthest for you, I will go farther than that. So we see how willing Casca is to do anything for Cassius, which is exactly what he is going to need. And so here, interesting, right? We get to see another view of how Cassius really views this conspiracy. And interesting, he shows that he's already been working behind the scenes. So although we don't get to see it as the audience, Cassius already has a number of Roman senators in his back pocket, hence why this conspiracy is going to be a success, but also that he recognizes the danger in what he's doing, but still chooses to do it anyway. Something that we already talked about in this scene, that we have characters who are going to ignore the signs that nature is pointing. Remember our discussion of the pathetic fallacy, right? This personification of nature with human emotion, and how Shakespeare is going to use that as a sign to all of these characters that what they're about to do is going to be the doom of Rome, and no one is able to see this. Next, just a small thing to point out, especially because this word now does not have the same connotation. When Cassius says that they're going to meet on Pompey's porch, they do not literally mean the idea of a porch that we would have, right? So meaning your front steps, so the area in front of your home. This would be the entrance to the theater that Pompey built. And this is an incredibly symbolic place to meet, right? Because remember what Caesar has done at the beginning of the play. He has gotten rid of Pompey, this other member of that first triumvirate. And so meeting there is going to be incredibly significant, right? They're going to plot the downfall of Caesar, the man responsible for Pompey's death in Pompey's theater itself. And again, we have Cassius, who is going to bring up the fact that the weather working around them, right here, the complexion of the element here, just simply meaning the weather around them, is going to be like the act that they are about to commit, right? So just as this weather has been bloody and fiery and terrible, their act of killing Caesar is going to be just as terrible. And again, this is the point where if you're really connecting with the play, you really just want to put your hand over your face, just head down, because you're looking at Cassius and you're looking at Casca, and they see all of these signs around them, signs that what they're about to do is a bad idea, and still they move forward with it anyway. And this is going to be significant because it points to the reality of how you can be so honed in on something and so convinced that what you are doing is right, that you'll perceive anything around you as an encouraging sign, right? A warning, remember, that Cicero gives to Casca at the beginning of the scene. And then here we're just going to talk about essentially the details of the conspiracy, because we need to remember, so not only are all of these characters going to completely misread the signs of nature, but that they rely entirely on Brutus and his character. We're going to explain that in a moment. So here we see this other figure approaching, and Casca seems rightfully worried, right? Recall that it's pitch black, so they don't know who is coming. This person might have overheard them, essentially planning treason, right? But Cassius calms Casca down and says that this is Cinna, and I know him by his gait, meaning the way that he walks. And again, this should show you how close-knit they are, right? That you can tell who someone is simply by the way that they move their body. Also in this portion of the scene, Cinna reveals to us another member of their conspiracy, Metellus Cimber, who we'll see later in the play. And also we see that Cinna questions, right, who is this? Right, because remember, they all are putting their lives on the line because what they're doing is committing treason. So he's essentially trying to assess, can we trust them? And Cassius confirms that Casca is one incorporate to our attempts, meaning that he is in on the conspiracy with us. And then moving then to Cinna, we see that he also makes note of the weather around them this fearful night. So again, so many signs that all of these characters miss, and that they are going to miss to their peril. And as we were reading through this slide in particular, you should have noticed that Cassius repeats this question of Cinna, am I not stayed for? Meaning, remember, they have this plan to meet in Pompey's porch. And so he's asking Cinna, are the people who are supposed to have my back, are they waiting for me? Again, showing that Cassius is very concerned that all of this go off without a hitch. And we see that Cinna himself is also worried, and he brings up an important point. He says, O Cassius, if you could but win the noble Brutus to our party. And this is the first hint that we receive, that they are going to need Brutus for all of this to work. And Cassius, ever the planner and the plotter, has a plan for this. And he gives a number of letters to Cinna, and he tells him to place these letters in several places in Brutus's home, right? Thinking back to his soliloquy, where we already know this moment is coming. Now it's finally arrived. So the first thing he says is to lay it on the praetor's chair. So this chair that would have been specifically for Brutus. And also understanding the word praetor to mean judge. So the judge's chair, right? Again, this is going to be a symbol of how much power Brutus is going to hold in the conspiracy. Not that he's going to realize it, mind you, but that this conspiracy will not happen without him. We also see that he is asked to place another letter in through the window, but also to place one upon old Brutus's statue. And so recall, part of the way in which Cassius gets Brutus to even contemplate the conspiracy in the first place is referencing Brutus's ancestor, the one who drove out those ancient kings from Rome. So again, something symbolic. It's not just that he throws in these letters at random. He places these letters in specific places that will have symbolic meaning to Brutus. Again, we see that conspirators are going to need Brutus, and they're going to need him for something in particular that we're going to talk about just in a moment. But first, we're also introduced to two more conspirators, and we're introduced to them in this way because they're going to come to light later in the play, but also to show us in rather quick succession how many followers Cassius already has. And so Cinna is going to leave the scene, go off to do his bidding, and we finally are back to Cassius and Casca and their discussion of Brutus. And Cassius reveals that they are going to go together to Brutus at his home after these letters have been placed, right, to continue their scheming and their plotting. And here Casca is going to reveal why exactly they need Brutus. And they need Brutus because of his high esteem among the Roman people. Right? We have this imagery of Casca saying he sits high in all the people's hearts, simply meaning that the Roman people love Brutus. And so here, revealing that their conspiracy to kill Caesar, it's murder, and it's going to look very much like murder, rightly so. But Casca says it'll be like rich alchemy, right? This ancient magic scientific, well, pseudoscientific idea, right, that you could change certain matter into gold, into precious metals, right? And so he's saying that our wicked act of killing Caesar in the hands of Brutus and his honor will be made into something that is virtuous and worthy. So this is why they need Brutus. They need his good character to essentially cleanse their wicked deed, right? This again should be another sign that what they're doing is wrong, right? Because not only are they aware of the fact that it is murderous and treacherous, but they're actively seeking to whitewash it, meaning to make it look clean from the outside, right? So that it goes down better with the Roman people. And finally, we see here that Cassius is going to agree with Casca, right? That he has rightly conceded or judged that they need Brutus very badly, or this is all going to end in a nightmare. And so here Cassius ends the scene by promising that they are going to awake Brutus, right? They're going to go to him and be sure of him, being sure that he is finally going to be on their side. That's it for video number 25 and for Act 1. So in our next video, we're going to begin Act 2, Scene 1, and we are finally going to come face to face with Brutus in the aftermath of all of this scheming and this plotting and this planning. So again, please, because a lot of these scenes are going to be longer or shorter, you need to make sure you're taking notes every single video. This is going to be particularly important because once we reach the end of the play in its entirety, I am going to test you on it, right? Obviously. So it's good to have those notes now rather than scrambling to take notes right before the exam. Okay? So I've gone ahead and posted the worksheet on Google Classroom. This scene is a bit shorter, so the worksheet is also shorter to reflect that. I'd like everyone to please upload their answers by Friday, May 8th, so it's this Friday by midnight. And also, please, a majority of you are uploading your images correctly, for those of you who are choosing to upload photos instead. But please, if you take a picture and you open it and you see that it's rotated, meaning it's either inverted, upside down, it's really hard for me to read, right? So I am not an owl. I cannot turn my head around 360 degrees. So please do me a huge favor and just make sure that your images are centered and readable. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow when we begin our discussion of Act 2, Scene 1.